Farnese. Is she the evil equivalent of femto? Could she be called mento? I don't know. She is mental, I'll tell you that. She's nuts, she's crazy, she's insane, and she's on the move. She's on the move to follow Guts. Why? Well, we'll have to find out, but whatever it is, it won't be any good because now we have her backstory. In fact, for that matter, we have the backstory of Serpico. Now I know his name, also known as Sir Lancelot. Now, I like Sir Lancelot. Is he a perfect person? No, he is not. I dislike with a passion Farnese. I see nothing good about her, and I don't know that people wouldn't say, oh, but she had a terrible life. Her mother and father, they ignored her. Her mother was this and that, and her father took off for years. Please. Booker T. Washington was born a slave. He didn't turn out like her. Farnese. So we get her backstory. And it's rather horrible. She's totally ignored at the house. Her father takes off for years at a time. Her mother is into her own things, like rich women are when their husbands leave. Nothing good about her mother either. And she's hated by all the servants in the mansion. And she finds our friend Serpico face down in the snow, exhausted, trying to support his mother and having a difficult time to do it. After all, what is he, 8 or 9 or 10 years of age? Come on, you can't take care of a sickly woman when you're 10 years of age, and yet he was doing it, which means there's some good qualities about him, which is why we all like him. We do. I do. So we get her storyline, and I admit it's a tough one. Nobody likes her. Poor little rich girl. But her response is to burn people, to burn animals. She's a psychopath. She's utterly a psychopath.
No redeemable qualities?
Have you found any? I was tough on Guts, as everyone knows. When I first am introduced to Guts, I saw nothing redeemable in him. And so now I have a tremendous respect for Guts. Is it possible that I could change my mind about Farnese? Yes. But if she ever catches up to Guts and is ever alone with Casca, the likelihood is she'll push Casca off a cliff, burn her at the stake, or dispose of her in some other way. That's what I think of Farnese. There's nothing I can think of that is going to bring her out of her narcissistic, self-destructive, evil way. If she could come out of it, you would think that young Serpico could have done it, because he was a great contrast to her. Yes, he was her servant. Yes, he obeyed her in every way, but his goodness came through all the time. Did it have an influence on her? No, it did not. So I've come to the conclusion that she's evil. She's as evil as without all the means to be evil as him, because now he has some sort of supernatural power there. He can go out and about, literally destroying and devouring people. She doesn't have that, but she's just horrible. Predictions. Do you have a prediction? And then I'll give you mine. My prediction is she's going to remain horrible.
I feel like with this backstory, it gave us way more clarity about Sir Lancelot than it did about Farnese. It felt more like his backstory than hers. Like clearly it was his backstory through like watching her, like his point of view of her. But I don't feel like we've fully gotten a Farnese backstory. Like I feel like we only got what he saw or what he felt. I thought it was really interesting for him too. Like the backstory wasn't just to me about Farnese. Like I felt like it was really interesting about Sir Lancelot himself.
Well, I think you're right about that, because it's every bit as much his backstory as hers. And in fact, you could argue that there's more of his story because we learn about his mother, his sickly mother, how he's taking care of her. Then he cannot take care of her anymore. She's off to a sanitarium. We're going to learn that she's going to be burnt at the stake. Where's the bitterness in his life? It's not there. It's not there. So by contrast, what we see about Farnese reflects so badly on her because we see what he went through. And quite frankly, it's worse than anything she went through. She's poor little rich girl who becomes horrible big girl. He's poor little boy who How do we describe him?
Well, he said that after those guys like beat him up,
Yes.
he was like, I kind of stopped feeling anything.
Yeah.
So I wonder if his relationship with Farnese is just because he's kind of numb to everything now. And he's kind of like, I had to shut off my emotions. So like what she does doesn't really affect me like it might someone else. Kind of interesting.
He is sort of like Star Trek Data. He has no emotions and has no desire to turn them on. Because what would happen if he turned on his emotions and then had to fully experience everything he's experienced because of Lady Farnese? He might go crazy.
My counter to that is the only time that I feel like he ever shows emotions is about Farnese. Like if something's going to happen to her, like that's the only time you kind of see him lose his cool.
Like you say, he is her protector. We think back a whole book, I think, where he went off to take on Guts to protect her, thinking that Guts was her biggest rival. And that took bravery on his part. A little bit of craziness because he knew he was no match for Guts. But we also know he's a deep thinker in the sense that he's a strategist. How can I perhaps defeat Guts, who's much more powerful than me? And he had a pretty darn good plan. It's just that no one can estimate high enough Guts' potential to fight back.
You know what's interesting too? You brought this up. I don't remember if you brought it up in this video, but when we were talking about how Farnese had all those suitors, she wouldn't dance with any of them and she would make Serpico go out and like fight them.
Yes.
And you were talking about when she was like flogging him and she's like, why don't you kill these men? Right? Well, yes. I don't know why it just came into my mind, but do you remember when she did that with Guts? When her and Guts like first got acquainted and she tells Serpico like, kill him. And he's like, no. He kind of doesn't go around killing people willy-nilly.
No, he doesn't at all.
Yeah.
He has a conscience. As a 10-year-old kid, he's taking care of his dying mother. An impossible task. He took it on.
He's emotionally intelligent in the sense that he can compartmentalize his feelings really well. I wonder if that comes from when he like shut them all off. I
think as a young boy, he had to shut everything off. His task was impossible. What do? He gets beat up whenever he's bringing his mother food. What do? You just turn off. But here's the interesting thing about him. What would he do without Farnese? That's a question I have. He might be lost without her. His position is because of her. He gets his daily bread because of her. He has little purpose in life outside of her because let's face it, if something happened to Farnese, he would wander away from that situation. His mother's gone. He's not going to go back to his father. His father has already said to him, you're a bastard child. You're not going to get any inheritance. I'll take care of you, of course. But you have 3 other brothers, half brothers, and they're fighting over who's going to take my position. So he'd have nowhere to go. And so I think without Farnese, his life would improve, but I think he would be lost for quite some time. Because really, I hope somehow they get separated and he can go and have a real life. But it would be a real adjustment for him. He'd probably find the girl of his dreams and fall in love and bake bread. Gaston, he just wanted to bake bread.
Please.
Someone's got to bake bread.
That's so fair. It should have been Gaston.
Should have been Gaston.
Something that we kind of glossed over that we need to talk about is that they are half brother and sister.
Yes.
We were kind of expecting it. Maybe not. Maybe so.
They both called father. That was the thing. And at the time, we debated whether he was just taken in as a street urchin and raised as though that really was his father.
And he kind of was, other than it really was his father in the end.
Except that you couldn't say they had a fatherly relationship. And even if that was possible, how can you have a fatherly relationship when the first time we see him is a year after Serpico moved in, and then he was gone for a couple of years. So there certainly was no love between them, and there was no way for any kind of love to even develop. Maybe appreciation could develop because he says, I've got a mansion above my head, nothing wrong with that. So I could see that kind of appreciation. And I could see how he knows, even as a young boy still, that serving Farnese is better than fighting 3 boys and getting beat up every day because you've got a loaf of bread for your dying mother. So I get it. And it's why you can excuse everything about
Serpico.
No, Sir Lancelot. So there's just so much good about Sir Lancelot. But the best thing that could happen to him is somehow Farnese falls in battle because she's no warrior.
You really don't think she has any redeemable qualities?
Well, everybody has the redeemable quality. I'm talking in real life. This is a book. Everyone has redeemable qualities for sure. Even the worst people have something good about them, and the best people have something bad about them too. You know, there's this balance going on. But it's really hard to see any good in Farnese, but it's easy to see it in Serpico. Sir Lancelot is just a good man. He really is. He just needs to get that ball and chain off of him.
There's a few things in that arc, we'll call it Farnese's backstory.
Okay.
Where I felt like she did things out of kindness, like even bringing Serpico home. I thought that was a nice thing. She wants to be this gentle person, but then finds herself being gentle and is like, I have to kill every ounce of gentleness within me. And she seems to be someone who's very afraid and wants to look scary to ward off things that scare her.
Yeah, she wants no one around her but Sir Lancelot. She scared everybody who worked for her father. They ignored her. Who wouldn't? Make her mad, she might burn you. So I understand that. I absolutely do. The thing is, she's going to encounter the religious aspect of the Holy See. It's not going to do her any good whatsoever, because really not the first inkling, but one of the strong inklings that there's something wrong up here in her is when she's flogging herself. We have to go way back for that to happen, but Guts is her captive, and she's flogging herself. Deep down, she doesn't like herself very much, that's for sure. But not liking yourself very much isn't necessarily a seed to grow into a good person.
Agreed.
It's more just a bad seed that's going to bring you even lower. And let me ask you this question. Has there been anything in her life post-Guts where you could say, oh, I see some sort of goodness in her?
I think her decision to leave the Holy See, follow Guts, which means pretty much giving up her status, giving up her men, and kind of putting herself in this lowly place, doesn't necessarily tell me that that's an act of kindness or an act of this or that, but it does show me that she's searching. And I feel like when you're searching and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with you and how to be better, I think that that's what she's doing on her journey and why she wants to follow Guts. It's because she doesn't like you said, she doesn't like who she is. But I don't think that anyone wants to sit there and not like themselves. So I think she thinks that being with Guts would be the cure for that. She's giving herself an opportunity to see am I really this evil person? Let me find out by following this guy, because he makes me feel something other than afraid. And I feel like she hasn't been able to get past any of her emotions that aren't just fear first, think later. I feel like everything she does is fear of hating herself, fear of other people, fear of intimacy, whatever you want to call it. She's just afraid of everything. And if she's able to kind of not be clouded by that by following Guts, I think that she might be able to redeem herself in that sense.
I think it's possible. I was going to say, I thought maybe you'd mention the fact that she fought alongside Guts when they were up on top of the tower. That still seemed more self-serving than anything. She was fighting with Lancelot also. But if they didn't fight, they would be dead. And she does not want to die. Am I willing to cut her as much slack as you are? Yes, in the sense that she wants to break away from the Holy See. She knows there's no good there. There is nothing good that she's going to get out of that. In fact, it's only reinforced the evil side of her, or the non-redeemable side of her. Let's put it that way.
The Holy See is an enabler of Farnese. They take her bad behaviors and they glorify them and they praise her for it, further ensuing her path to being a bad person.
Even her father knew better than to do that.
Agreed.
Probably that's why he left for years at a time. Yeah, it's a very sad story. This, in a way, this is her own, as poor little rich girl, it mimics the story of poor Guts. But boy, what a difference in the two, how they turned out. And it's also, just to throw Lancelot back in the groove here, he sort of goes through everything that she goes through. Nobody respects him in the mansion. He's just a servant as far as they're concerned. So he got no love from that group of people.
They did thank him for dealing with her, so they didn't have to.
Oh, so they didn't have to deal with her. But I bet you there was never even a pat on the back for him. So yeah, it's to me, it's the saddest part of this story is the story of these two. And yet, if they weren't together, I'm talking about Serpico and Farnese, if they weren't together, would they both have survived?
Not likely.
Not likely. Yeah.
I think that Serpico is kind of some level of like having a conscience for her. Like, I feel like he keeps her not turning like pure evil. She clearly has some feelings for him too.
Yes.
Another thing that we didn't really discuss is when she tried to burn herself in the fire. I think the most interesting part about that is that she kind of like fell into his arms like she wanted to be with him. And I was not expecting him to turn her down.
Oh, he rejected her. I mean, it says right in the picture, push.
Yeah, and I was surprised about that because me and you had kind of been like, is he in love with her? Like, what is their relationship? Like, why does he care about her so much? And it was interesting to see her be the one who was interested in him.
Yeah.
Because I feel like how we were introduced to her, she was more enamored by Guts than Serpico. Like, she kind of was like, threw him to the back burner for Guts. And so I never thought of her of having any interest in Serpico. But then seeing the backstory, I'm like, oh, you're in love with Serpico.
Well, she's opportunistic too.
What do you mean?
Well, she's always looking for the next good gig.
So what do you think her gig would be with him, though?
Well, she's not going to rid herself of him. I'm talking about Sir Lancelot, because she can't really survive without him. She's so messed up, she doesn't know what she wants.
Okay,
she has no clue.
But that was her being vulnerable, which we never since
or
then.
Or that was her trying to take advantage. There's two ways to look at that.
Okay, so you think she was trying to take advantage of him?
Yeah, I don't think she's ever vulnerable.
Really? I feel like she's so vulnerable.
I'm not saying she isn't vulnerable to anyone coming along and hurting her. She is. But she would never acknowledge that. She's the queen bee as far as she's concerned.
She kind of self-deprecates too. Like, you know how people will tell mean jokes about themselves so you don't tell it about, them?
Yeah.
Like, people do that. I feel like she kind of does that. Like, she's mean to herself and mean to others to, like, deflect rejection ever. So that's why I was more shocked that she was willing to do that, like, and show that side of herself to Serpico so boldly and, like, pretty much just all out on the table, and then him reject her.
Well, don't you think it could be, too, that in a way she might have known that he was going to push her away, and that's her way of also being rid of him? Because she let no one get close to her in the mansion, and she preferred that. They were older now. You could argue she doesn't need him anymore. But I don't know. It's a mystery. And to tell you the truth, we're never going to have the answer to our questions right now until we read further, because we don't know where it's going to end up. Maybe it's time for you to make a prediction where it's going to end up just with Farnese.
But I want some sort of like repentance from her, like for her to acknowledge, like, I have done wrong. And so I'm hoping, my prediction is that at some point she's going to do that.
I would love for that to happen. I'm not holding out for any possibility that it will. I don't see a good end for her. I see the only good end for Lancelot to be rid of her. How that's going to happen, I don't know. Clearly, she's going to catch up. They're both going to catch up to Guts. And whatever happens then is going to be very important. I don't see Guts wanting her to tag along, because he's already basically said to her, you mean nothing to me. You slow me down, I'll just get rid of you.
Yeah.
So there's no love lost between her and Guts. And I don't think she has any kind of a love interest in Guts, really. I don't know that she's capable of love.
I think she's enamored by him.
Yeah, I mean, she looks up to a guy that is absolutely fearless. And she's a woman who's been hiding, to the best she can, her fear all along, her whole life. But, she just doesn't get along well with people.
Yeah, that's true.
She really doesn't. So how do we have an estimate of her age, 20-ish?
I looked it up right before this, surprisingly, and it says that she's 19.
Okay. I'm looking forward to continuing to read, because I really do want to know what happens to her. But as far, I kind of say, I throw it out there, she's a psychopath. And maybe she isn't. Maybe the fact that she had a bit of an awakening, saying to herself, like you pointed out, I got to get away from the Holy See. This isn't good for me. And she also sees that she has to have seen by now burning all those people wasn't the right way. So does she have that little kernel of potential in her? Yes. All right, I admit it. Yes, she does. But whether or not she's going to water that little kernel and get it to grow, I'm not holding out much hope for her. I really hope Lancelot comes out of this. He would be a good companion for Guts.
Agreed. He kind of needs someone by his side. Guts does.
Yes.
Just because Casca's not much help. And then I think that Shyster Boy and Puck are kind of just like, they kind of just chat to each other on the side.
Yeah.
So he needs someone that's almost his equal. Like someone that he can actually like converse with.
I think Shyster Boy could learn a lot from Lancelot.
Lancelot, not Guts?
Guts isn't going to necessarily devote time teaching him how swordsmanship goes. But I could see Lancelot doing that.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, we can't get into a whole Lancelot and Serpico.
I know. So that's it. It's not the end, but it is the end for this episode. Please, if you would be so kind, like and follow. Share it with a friend. We love it when you do that. And keep those cards and letters coming. Or in this case, sending us notes. Goodbye.